Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today, we're going to talk about Ethereum. We're going to be looking at where we are currently in the market cycle, try to decipher where we could be going. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and also check out the Telegram channel, which you can find a link to in the description below. Let's go ahead and jump in. So, we have more or less been following Ethereum since it was $80 a couple years ago. And it's been one hell of a journey since then. And what I've said before is that during this market cycle, I expect Ethereum to be able to get to the $10,000 mark plus or minus a few K. Now, ideally, it'd be nice if we could overshoot the 10K mark, but we always have to be prepared for anything. Now, some people might naturally question, have we already hit a market cycle peak? And I've been pretty adamant with my answer on that. I don't think we have. Now, I do think the move we had earlier in the year for Bitcoin was at least a local top, but I do not contend that it is a market cycle top. If we were to look at Ethereum, where I think we are, okay, and looking at, say, the last cycle, which I lived through as well, and I'm sure many of you did, I see us as more or less in a region like this, okay, or like this one, where we've made a drastic move to a new paradigm shift in the market, more than an order of magnitude, okay? I mean, over here, we called this the accumulation phase of a lifetime, and then we made a video here saying this is the re-accumulation phase of a lifetime. And then over here, we called it the overvaluation re-accumulation phase of a lifetime. And what's going on over here, where we currently are, in my even perhaps naive interpretation, is I feel like we're getting accustomed to the new normal. My thoughts are that Ethereum is having to get accustomed to the new normal, and it can take a while to get accustomed to the new normal. Now, you might look at this and say, well, Ben, I mean, it's up from $1,700 to $3,400. Is that not a 2x move? It is, and that's great, and we want to see it, and we need to spend time at these levels and prove to the market that this is the new normal before we can decisively move to a $5,000 ETH, a $6,000 ETH, and higher, okay? So going back to these areas over here, the way I see it is the more months that pass in the cycle, the more optimistic I will be, the more bullish I will be, because ultimately I think the main thing that the market needs at this point, we just need time, right? I mean, time is on our side. I think we just need time, and we need a decent amount of it. Now, looking back at this first move here, again, it moved sideways for about a year, right? About a year. And during that phase, we not only came back up to this first local top that we put in around $15, we also had a move later that took us all the way up to $20. So you can see from the top of this move here to this secondary move later on, it was actually about another 40% or so. Okay, maybe not quite 40, maybe about 35% move, 40% move if you measure it from here to the top of this secondary wick over here. We still had drops during that phase. We had a 71% drop there. We also had another move over here where we put in a local top, and then we had another bounce where we came back up, but we didn't actually go quite to the top. We came back down to the bottom at around $135, and we made a bounce of about 200% before dropping back down about 49% or so, maybe 50%. But we ultimately leveled off and then eventually made a move to a new paradigm shift in what it meant to hold one ETH, okay? So today, I would say that Ethereum is in this phase or something similar to it, not this one. Okay, I do not think we are in this phase. I do believe this phase will come, but I don't think we're at that phase yet. I think that phase will come when Ethereum's market cap is hopefully trading for around 1 trillion. Honestly, I would like to see it come when Ethereum's market cap is closer to 1 trillion, not where it currently is today. So I do think we have a lot more upside with Ethereum this cycle, but that doesn't mean we have to experience all of that upside next month. I've seen a lot of people call for a market cycle peak next month for Bitcoin. It's hard for me to really get on board with that thinking because we're not even I mean, we're not even at an all-time high. Bitcoin's not even at an all-time high right now. We're not going parabolic above the all-time high. I struggle to understand how next month could be a market cycle peak. Again, I could be wrong. If we do just go down from here, then September will not have been a market cycle peak. It would have been April, right? It would have been April, not September. So when we're looking at market cycle peaks and whatnot, I think that there's obviously reasons to think with Ethereum that, again, we are at this phase of the cycle where we had an explosive move to the upside, and then following that move, we're leveling off. Now, what we're going to do is if you look at this first move, we came up to the purple regression band, and then we ultimately went sideways for a while. Now, this one came back down to the green one. I don't think this one's going to come back down to the green one, or this was increasing a lot quicker back then, and we more or less just went sideways into it. This one over here, again, we went sideways for a while, and then we ultimately turned it up. Same thing here, up here, and then now we've been going sideways for a while. But if you look, this first one made it to the purple band, and then we went sideways for about a year before ultimately breaking through that band. Right now, the top of that purple band is at a modest $7,000, and I do think we will break $7,000 this market cycle. Now, something else we can look at is we can take measured moves here. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a measured move from that move all the way over to say this final capitulation, okay? And that was before we ended up moving back up. And if we overlay that there, you can see the similarities, in fact, right? You can see the similarities. If we were to shift it over, it might look something like that, potentially. I mean, that looks pretty similar, right? You could shift it here and say that looks somewhat similar, but you can see some of the similarities there, and that we're in this long sideways movement. Maybe we put a new all-time high soon, maybe we don't, but I do think we're just in this long reaccumulation. We're getting used to what the new normal is. The market is having to accept that a $3,000 ether, let's say between a $2,000 to $4,000 ether, is the new normal before we can move higher. And then we also can go back over here and look at this move and compare, see what actually happened. And I'm going to redo that one and get it until we have the next move up. So from sub-cycle bottom, let's call it, up until this point. And if we overlay that one right here, you can see it did something like that. And we're going to shade this a slightly different color. And if we move it over, there's some similarities there, right? There's some similarities there. So I think for what I'm looking at is I would not contend that Ethereum at $4,400 was a market cycle peak. Okay, I do not think it was. I think, as I've said, I think we're in long reaccumulation, and I don't know how long it's going to last. I could see it lasting potentially several more months before we can break out to, say, hopefully start a move to $10,000. It might not happen until next year, but we could go higher than $3,400 as well. I mean, if history is any indication, we've seen those types of moves before, and I do think that Ethereum will ultimately trend up with time this market cycle. I do believe time is in fact on our side. Now, I think the Ethereum Bitcoin valuation is an interesting thing to watch right now, because if we look at, say, like the weekly time frame, we can in fact see that right now it is a pretty important milestone. Now, on the daily time frame, we broke through this stuff long ago, okay? But on the weekly time frame, we might still have a little bit of work to do. If we can break through this, we might see new all-time highs relatively soon. Okay, if the Ethereum Bitcoin valuation can break through that on the weekly time frame, not just a wick, then we might be seeing all-time highs relatively soon. But one of the things I would like to say is that we've seen Ethereum do well against Bitcoin in the past. A lot of times it doesn't really do that well in the fourth quarter. We're not there yet, right? We still have another month. There is September to go. So potentially Ethereum can maybe even put in another move and still be in lines with the typical Q4 bleed. I know a lot of people think, the Q4 bleed is just complete nonsense. We don't have to see it for a lot of fundamental reasons, and maybe you're right. Maybe we don't have to see a Q4 bleed for the 7th year in a row. What my perspective is I've seen it happen 7 years in the past. And by the way, when I say a Q4 bleed, I don't mean against the US dollar, I just mean against Bitcoin. Because Ethereum bled against Bitcoin in Q4 of last year, but the valuation against the US dollar was in fact going up. So when I talk about a Q4 bleed, I'm just saying with respect to Bitcoin, not with respect to the US dollar. What happens with respect to the US dollar is somewhat irrelevant because that's going to be dependent on what Bitcoin does. So if Bitcoin goes down, then Ethereum will bleed against the US dollar and Bitcoin. But if Bitcoin goes up and goes parabolic, then Ethereum will bleed against Bitcoin, but it'll be going up against the US dollar. That's more or less how I would speculate the market would play out. So anyways, this is probably a pretty important area to watch right now on the Ether Bitcoin valuation. Can we break above? And if we do break above, can we then go and put in a new local top, a new local high for the Ether Bitcoin valuation above 0.082? And if we can, and we're off to the races, then it might put a little interesting. It might add a little bit of spice to the whole Ethereum, the idea that Ethereum makes a move against Bitcoin in January, if it in fact makes that move in the fourth quarter of the year, as opposed to waiting until the first quarter. So I do think the main area to watch right now for Ethereum against the Bitcoin valuation is around this area. Ether USD, I think we just need time. I mean, ultimately, I feel like we just need a lot of time, and we will eventually make it to where we are wanting to go. So again, pulling up the rainbow, you can see that we've seen these similar types of moves. This is where I currently think we are. I think we just need time, and hopefully we'll come out the other side. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, check out the premium list. You can find a link to that in the description below. I do put a lot of work into that. A lot of people are getting onboarded there, so make sure you guys check that out if you are interested in more content than you get on the public channel. Subscribe, click the bell icon to turn on your notifications, and I will see you next time. Bye.